Perry Carpenter, AI enthusiast and author, is joining us for our YouTube series on AI innovators, and we are so excited to talk about deepfakes and all things AI. Perry, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
So, you're here. We want to talk about your book, Fake, a practical guide to living in a world of deepfakes, disinformation, and AI generated deceptions. And it dives into the human side of deception. Why do you think deception is so central to human nature? And how does AI make us even more vulnerable?
Yeah, so deception has been with us since the very beginning of humanity. Anytime somebody has something to gain or something to preserve, deception starts to enter the picture, right? It's I want that thing that somebody else has. Let me trick them into to giving it to me, or distract them so that I can get it and use a deceptive means to distract them. Or I'm afraid that I might lose something. And so deception enters the picture to be able to deal with that loss aversion. And I think over the centuries and millennia and into now, we just see the evolution of how technology intersects with that and makes that more scalable, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, and when you come into like the social media era and the way that social media is fueling and enabling disinformation and misinformation and online scams, to the point where you see generative AI becoming a tool that can then be used to create highly crafted scams or pieces of disinformation. For somebody like me that really studies the fundamentals of deception and human nature, it becomes something that I have to look at.
I'm sure. And we already talked a little bit about deep fakes, but let's get more into deep fakes, the synthetic media. How is this kind of AI generated content changing our ability to trust what we see
Mm.
and hear online?
Yeah, that's a really good and interesting question. And I think I've, since writing the book and even throughout it, started to arrive at some counterintuitive conclusions. And one of them is, of course, we've seen study after study over the past couple of years that says we're just not good at detecting deep fakes on our own. As human species, we're not good at knowing what's real and what's fake anymore. And the tools will only get better at generating fake content that is so deceptive that it will just fly past all of our filters. So one of the frustrating things that tends to happen is, let's say there's a big deep fake that gets on the news, and then news stations will invite cybersecurity people like me on for like a 2 minute segment just to kind of give background, and then the last thing they say is, well, how do we protect ourselves from these? And they want really easy answers, and the public wants really easy answers. And so people like me may end up giving bad advice like, well, look at the fingers, and if they look malformed, then obviously it's a deep fake, or look at the hair, or look at the text, and when you see those, you know it's a deep fake. I think that gives a false sense of security, because, as you know, and as many of your viewers know, all you have to do is hit the generate button one more time, and maybe those aren't there anymore. And the tools are getting better to where, yeah, maybe those were decent tells a year and a half ago, but they're not now. And so those are only tells for a scammer or disinformation artist who is lazy, or does not see them themselves. Because we've always been able to just take that bad output and pull it into Photoshop and fix it. So I just think that's bad advice. So the thing that I've started to tell people is, I don't care if this is synthetic media. What I care about is this deceptive media. And there's three or four reasons behind that, but I'll try to give you the highlights real quick so I don't monologue too long. Um, One of the reasons is, I think that, again, our ability as humans to detect is really bad. Technology's ability to detect is also pretty bad right now. It's about coin toss, for a lot of these types of things. So they're not reliable on detection. The other thing is that everything that's in front of us right now, and even more in the future, has the fingerprints of AI all over it. From your friend on Instagram that doesn't have pores on their face whenever they're posting pictures because they're using AI filters, to all of the different buttons and all of the social media platforms and writing platforms that now say, help me write with AI. Everything that we're doing, even the genuine stuff that we're doing, has the fingerprints of AI all over it. And so that means if I'm a scammer and know that, I can take advantage of that because your genuinely created text with your real thoughts and ideas has been touched by AI. Your photos has been touched by AI. And we're getting desensitized to that, which also means that if I'm a scammer, I can create a photo that looks more real than 90% of the photos that are out there because I can choose to show the pores and the imperfections and the toll of a hard day in the way that I generate that. Then the other thing is, if we're only looking for deepfakes, we're missing all of the simple tricks that have been around forever of just cropping an image in a deceptive way, taking a clip of a video out of context, taking lines from one speech or one point in time and attributing it to a different speech or a different point in time. And so if we're so hung up on, is this a deep fake or not, we miss all of those other things. And if I'm a scammer or disinformation artist and I'm going after money or I'm going after minds, all I care about is the effectiveness of the thing.
What I'm looking into, I'm curious if you found this, is I'd love for eventually, as AI gets more and more sophisticated, it's impossible to tell what's a deep fake by the human
Mhm.
eye. Have you encountered any AI system yet that has been really good at detecting deep fakes? I've played around with a few,
Yeah,
but I'm not that impressed. Have you encountered anything?
not reliably. Yeah. And I think it's going to be an arms race. Um, I also think that there are tools out there, like many of the above board companies, the major players out there, like Midjourney and OpenAI and Meta and others are doing subtle things, either where they can assign provenance on it in the metadata or in a visible part of the image, or they're putting some watermarks that are undetectable by the human eye. But that doesn't mean that everybody's doing it. And I can use an open source model that doesn't have that at all. And so then if I teach people, well, look for the watermark or look for the provenance marker, then there's still this whole blind area that the cyber criminals will turn to. They're going to be using those things. So now I'm only catching the people who are using these because they're the most convenient ones or because they've become curious and are just trying it out for the first time. So again, the last thing I want to do is give somebody a false sense of security. So what I would say though is that the detection tools will get better. They will never be foolproof. They'll never be all that great, but they will be one data point within a collection of other things that you can take into account. And they'll start to become usable when they are integrated into all the systems that we use every day. So if it's naturally integrated into Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and or maybe as a browser plugin or something like that, and you're viewing your social media feed and you come across something and it says there's an 83% chance that this is synthetic, now that you're going to view that a little bit differently. But the thing that I don't think that they can ever do is say, there's 100% chance either way, because then you're going to find the outlier and then you're not going to trust the system anymore.
I so badly want there to be an answer though, like how to
Right.
help people tell fact from fiction, but it seems like it's just too much influx. We're
Yeah.
not sure.
I'll tell. I mean, as a journalist and somebody that teaches people on this, there's a really weird conundrum that I've seen, and it crystallized for me with Hurricane Helene and a lot of the fake images that were going around with that. If you remember, there was this picture that went viral that had this little girl that was crying in a boat. She looked like tortured. She was just wet and miserable, and she was clutching this puppy to her. And people were spreading that on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling that today, and other social media platforms. And of course, there was an outpouring. I mean, it was a fairly well done deep fake, and there was a lot of emotion infused with it. And there were times when people would call it out and say, "This is a deep fake. Here are the tells, and here's why we know for sure." And it was amazing to see some of the responses. There's one that I talk about in an article for The Hill that I wrote, and it was a politician that gave the response. And she said, "I don't know where this came from, and frankly, I don't care if it's real or not, because it essentially it reflects an underlying truth that she had bought into." And I think that we're going to be at that point more and more with society, where people will say, "I don't care if it's real. What I care about is, does it represent a truth or something that I already believe in? And if so, that's fine." So they're very readily just admitting that this is a cognitive bias factory that they're given into.
So, how can we promote ethical AI use in media and in politics? Knowing everything we just spoke about and knowing that maybe we can't define truth
Mm.
exactly with AI at this point.
Yeah, God. If I could answer that question, I would be able to maybe write another book. I mean, so I think the ethical use of AI is just being transparent with it. So for me, I see things in like, are you coming forward and are you saying that this is synthetic, or are you being deceptive with it? So again, for me, it's not necessarily, is this real? Is it fake? Or the thing becomes, is this deceptive or not?
So, I think a lot of this goes back to education and media literacy, right? In terms of, staying on top of everything and deciding what's real or what's important to you. What should people know to stay safe? Is it just reading the news every day? What do you recommend? What are some tips?
Yeah. So in the last three chapters of the book that I did, I had a number of like games and activities that people can do, because I think that getting into a different mind space is really key to start to understand the way that information can be used and weaponized against us and distorted. So, like one of the weird games that's there that I have is to create your own piece of disinformation. Think about a story that you might want to get out. Don't actually put it out on social media, but go through the process of saying, if I wanted to convince somebody that this situation happened, how would I write the story? What emotion would I bring out and try to poke at? What image might encapsulate the story? And can I find one and do like a cheap fake, or can I create one and do it like a deep fake? Um, who would I target and how would I target them? How would I make sure that it gets in front of them in the right way? What social media channel would I use? And then once you start thinking through that lens a few times, you'll realize it is fun to go through the process. The other thing is you'll start to view everything that comes across your social media feed just a little bit differently.
So, going back to AI deception, where do you see it heading in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Certainly to the point where you and I and the people that we know are not going to be able to tell what's real and what's not. And I think that there's going
Does it scare you? It scares me.
it I think there's interesting societal conversations that are going to be had. And some of that is going to be that people are going to be confronted with the fact that they are slaves to their own confirmation bias. And we have to figure out how to unshackle ourselves from that. And we have to be willing to look in the mirror and say, am I the kind of person today that is willing to try to take a step back and challenge my pre-existing beliefs and assumptions? Am I willing to hear an opinion that contradicts my own? Look at evidence that contradicts with things that I already agree with. And when we're in that space, then I think we're less vulnerable, or hopefully less vulnerable, to some of the AI generated deceptions that are out there. Um, the other thing, an interesting societal conversation that's going to be happening is there's a phrase that we're going to hear more and more and more over the next few years, which is just the liar's dividend. And that's a concept. I think I first saw that in print around 2015, 2016. And what they were getting at with it is that because people have seen so many really convincing deep fakes, that now anybody that really does something that's really caught on tape, um, all they have to say is that wasn't me. That's an AI fake. And you have to give them at least a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. You have to slow down. You have to assess, do an investigation. Or I also, if I want to fake somebody, create a deep fake and smear somebody, I can do that with the touch of a button right now. And I can lob that onto social media and it gets out there. And as news cycles go, they're really, really fast. Distribution is really, really fast. And what we've seen through studies around that same time, around 2015, 2016, up to 2018, is that false media travels between 10 and 20 times faster than the truth online. And because it's an outrage factor. It's emotionally charged. It can be amplified by bots or trolls out there. And when you have that, and it's hitting people's confirmation bias, well, then I can lob all the lies out there that I want to. And the scary thing is we're more likely to remember the fake story even after we've seen the correction. And again, like with the picture of the little girl, even after I get the correction, I might go, well, that maybe wasn't true, but I still know that the core fundamental thing is true.
Still like in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that liar's dividend is going to be really, really big over the next several years, and I think we're going to hear that over and over and over again. And then the other thing that I think we're going to wrestle with is just AI in general, and the fact that AI systems, um, outside of some of the ethical issues on training and everything else that are being grappled with, every AI system is inherently biased because the internet is inherently biased and that's what it was trained on. And so on the internet, of course, we've always heard that, history is written by the winners. And on the internet, there are groups who have a majority opinion that are very highly weighted in the amount of text that's represented. And then there are minorities or people that have not even had access to the internet for very long or at all that have a very underrepresented amount of data that's there. And so when all this gets ingested to the training models, it's really, really hard to correct for the overrepresentations and the underrepresentations. And the same thing holds true for every different region around the world. What is quote unquote true and right in one region of the world might be really, really offensive in another region of the world. And so you're going to have interesting conversations around, well, if one thing is true in one region and is not true in another region, what does that mean for our concept of truth?
Do you think that companies and governments should play more of a role in curbing AI misuse?
Um, it's a delicate balance, right? I think informed companies and governments should at least have opinions and start to shape where things are going. Um, Regulation is really, really difficult because we're bad at it. At the same time, many of the AI companies are actually asking to be regulated. They're wanting some guidelines. And you have, well, definitely in the past, OpenAI has said the government should have a role in regulating. Anthropic has built their responsible scaling policies that are essentially self governing around how they want to do it. And they were actually supportive of the AI regulatory bill in California that got vetoed recently. But they're very willing to be regulated. Because I think many of these companies know that they are going to get to the point where um, their commercial interests might outweigh their societal interests. And they're going to be pushed by either the arms race to get better because another government is starting to accelerate, or they're going to be pushed by stakeholder interest to do something that potentially violates a, 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 a boundary that they have within their conscious today that might go away 5 years from now.
Okay, Perry, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.